Islam, Morris.
Islam.
We're going to start off to do the honors. So let's get the prayer in order, and then we're going to have the readings by the prophet that's supposed to be proclaimed every meeting. So if you could please rise. And in honor of perfection, we're going to put the 5 and the 7 and the 2 up. And stand on the square and repeat after me. Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, the Father of the universe.
Father of love.
Father of love.
Truth. Peace. Freedom. And justice. Allah is our protector.
Allah is our protector.
Our guide. And our salvation. By night. And by day. Through his and her holy prophet. Noble Drew Ali. Islam. We start off with the divine warnings from the prophet that are supposed to be proclaimed in every meeting. That since 1929, these readings weren't being read in what is known as the Moorish Science Temple of America, right? And then that was done because of the sellouts that infiltrated in order to take over the power that Noble Drew Ali had. And with them taking over the power, without giving honors to the prophet, then they can go on and tell the people anything because, our people are the most accepting people of everything, right? Because everybody else has their own stuff. So, like this has to do with us directly, right? Us meaning anybody that has been branded with a label that doesn't connect them to their ancient foremothers and forefathers, right? So people who were branded white people, we're talking about them. People who were branded black people, Negro people, colored people, etc. Right? All the labels other than white people is us. The white people label are the Europeans, who the conquerors of the Americas called poor whites. And then those are the ones that, went to school with us, that lived next door. When we had roaches, they had roaches too. You know what I mean? And they just became the outcasts of their particular people. Just like the Negro, black, colored people became the outcasts of their ancestry. Right? Because not even the Negro, black, colored ancestors want them. Like the Negro, black, colored people, they have a God, right? Their own God doesn't want them and rejects them, right? But they're the most religious and spiritual and metaphysical and historical, etc. people, right? They built everything. Everything was founded by them, but nobody ever wants to accept the fact that those people aren't being called by their right name. And that if they would only attach more to everything that they do, so if they say they're a nation of Islam, say you're a Moorish nation of Islam. If you're Yamasee, say you're a Moorish Yamasee. If you're Cherokee, say you're a Moorish Cherokee. If you're Negro, say you're a Moorish Negro. Right? But that could only be done by those people. Like we're telling them. Right? Our duty is uplifting and flattering humanity. So how do we do that? We tell the people what they're supposed to know. You're not Negro, black, colored, you're Moors. Just attach more to anything that you do, and now anything that you do is going to have some weight and some legitimacy. Like it's that simple. But people aren't going to do that. They want to try to slander their own birthright. And that's why their ancestors don't want them. That's why they're the cast out people, labeled as minorities. Because their ancestors want them to proclaim who they are. And they don't want to do it. So then you don't deserve to be free.
Exactly.
And Negro, black, colored people being in that position is because of these two readings that weren't read since 1929. So since 1929, these two readings haven't been open to people. Just like how every other thing that you want to read is open to people. Right? You can quote anybody, and somebody is going to back that and say, yeah, I trust in that. The only people that back Noble Drew Ali are Moors. Right? That's the only people that back him. And we don't care about anybody else. And if we care about anybody else, it's going to be Marcus Garvey. Because Noble Drew Ali said he's the forerunner. So that's why we honor him. But don't think that, you know, we accept the fact that he's Marcus Garvey and he didn't put El Bay on his name when he's supposed to know better. Talking about black stuff and improving the Negro. Immediately he should change the name of the organization. Forget all the accolades, because you're not improving the Negro. I don't care what you do, what you have.
But it was changed.
Change to what?
United Africans Improvement
You
Association.
might as well call yourself Negro,
Yeah, where's the more?
right? And everybody's compromised because everybody took checks.
Who is Leo Africanus?
Roman, general,
Because real
that's
true
all.
people from that Kemet called it Al-Kabilan.
right?
Right.
But
Kemet,
before
Abyssinia.
that,
Yeah.
it was a maxim.
Right, exactly.
Islam.
So Al-Kabilan is even fiction,
Right.
because it was a maxim, right? So that's what Prophet said. The first divine name of Africa is a maxim. But nobody's going to listen to the Prophet because that's the guy with the funny hat. So we're not going to listen to that guy. That's the Arab guy that came over here because the Sultan gave him power to come over here. And then he's the guy that plagiarized some Europeans' Aquarian gospel. And they don't follow him. But it's okay. Because even Noble Drew Ali said, what's all you Moors doing here? I could count the ones of you that's going to be saved on one hand and have fingers left over. So everybody's not going to be saved, you know, right? Just like everybody didn't know to follow Noah and build an ark too. If we're not going to do it, if we're not going to proclaim our own nationality, that it's not even like Noble Drew Ali brought it. He's just another Moor. Because there was his ancestors were saying they were Moors and were suing the U.S. corporation we're going to be talking about today, and the Canada Corporation. Like they're suable in their official and in their private capacity, because they say that they're foreigners here. It's not us. They say that they came here and they conquered. But why were they able to conquer? Because they knew about the warnings that Noble Drew Ali laid down. Because all of them are Masons. And if you're a Mason, you know about Noble Drew Ali and his teachings and everything. Have to. Prerequisite. You have to know about this guy from North Carolina. That was a Cherokee Indian that took the mandate from us. So now the secret is that this is not Morocco, this is the U.S. corporation, and make everybody think that U.S. is really a country, and go around the world and make allies and have everybody have this front look good. But when the system starts crashing because all those people agreed to fiat, now they're mad and they want to take the U.S. out. And Canada Corporation. And Noble Drew Ali specifically came to break the Roman seal so we can be free. And if we don't put in place what he set up, everything that we're doing is going to come to naught. Because that means you gave those people jurisdiction to come into your personal space. Right? So we're going to start with a warning from the Prophet to be read in every meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must put an end to all radical and agitating speeches while on their jobs, homes, or on the public streets. We advocate peace and not destruction. Stop trying out your cards with the Europeans, for it causes confusion. There has been much confusion caused by members trying out their cards. The cards are for your salvation. Failure of obeying my orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members that seek to hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or to violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet, and if they lose confidence in their prophet, give up their card and button, cease wearing your turban or fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. For this is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet is sending out a divine plea to all true American citizens that they may do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. That was January 15th, 1929. The next letter to be proclaimed every meeting, March 18th, 1929. Yeah, pretty good, Omar. Islam. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme they can to disqualify me so they themselves may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The one that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the last few days. And then after that, all these different organizations started popping up, right? Pushing some type of national idea, but under a slave status. Because they thought that because Noble Drew Ali was out the way, i.e. assassinated, right, that the activity of the movement was supposed to stop. But everybody was supposed to be active in the Moorish movement. Like everybody was supposed to take their place amongst the affairs of men. And many people did that, but they did that under a slave label, so they can get some handouts, so they can get some checks under the table, and not share with the congregation or the members or whatever the other people that were following those heads who knew about Noble Drew Ali. If you know about Marcus Garvey, you know about Noble Drew Ali. If you know about Elijah Muhammad and Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, you know about Noble Drew Ali. If you know about Clarence 13X and Nation of Gods of Earth, you know about Noble Drew Ali. If you know about Malachi York L, you know about Noble Drew Ali.
That's my plan.
Right? If you know about Martin Luther King, you know about Noble Drew Ali. And if you're somebody out there that has heard all of those heads' names and more, but then when you say, oh, you don't know who Jolly is, and you're just staring back at me, that's a problem. And it's a problem because of your head, not because of, the cracker. Right? Everybody right now, as far as the conscious movement is concerned, right? Everybody they're picking a side, right? Sprague Benz picked a side. You're not playing that Rastafarian crap. He might say Rastafarian to you because he doesn't want to hurt your feelings, but he knows that he's a Moor. He has LB on his name. Right? Don't be talking about Most Def anymore. You better be calling him by his real name, because he said that don't call me Most Def anymore. Call him by his free national name.
Casa LB?
Right? Yasin. Yasin. Right? And even that, and even with the Casa Bay, like that was when it clicked in. You put it on the album cover. He's out there. He's somebody that you would consider, he's a star in the quote unquote rap game. He's been in movies and stuff. He's a star. Yeah, well, he's big. But he doesn't really get too much distribution now. He's not in too much movies anymore. Right? What happened if Will Smith said, I'm big? Right? And everybody knows. Right? Like everybody knows. Everybody's been told. And it's not like there's no reason not to be part of it. There's no reason not to join, not to become a member of the Moorish movement. Right? Because we have done ourselves a disservice by not following the Prophet as a nation of people who claim to be a nation, but nobody wants to claim the nation that is the jurisdiction of the land that they're standing on. But they're going to claim all these other nations all over the world. And not one time has Negro, Black, Colored, African, whatever they call themselves, been saved by the people who they claim to be.
Wow.
Right? I will say it again. That's the reason why we only support our own. If you're not wearing a fez and all that, and you're not pushing national principles that people study and people getting information about really what's going on out here in this so-called matrix that we call matrix, that really nationality is the order of the day, and nationality is really jurisdiction. So jurisdiction is really the order of the day. What's your jurisdiction? But in order to know what their jurisdiction is, you have to know your own. Right? So when we say that we're having a Skype lecture, and we have a Skype lecture and people come to the Skype lecture and whatever, like this is just another brother that has information, just like any of us have information. Right? That's why we're not going to do Skype with the known people, because those guys don't have any information, really and truly. It's not the known people that have information. It's the unknown people. It's the people that you never heard about before. That's going to come give you so much information you don't even know what to do after you get it. Right? And we're chasing after these people. Right? I mean, nothing's wrong with them, because they're the ones that are the foundation of why we're even involved in this. But we can't get caught up in the follower mentality. Right? I guarantee you, like we're not We're not gonna bring Taj here. It's not gonna happen, right? Because that's jeopardizing his life. And if we don't have our own plane to bring him here, with our own pilot, then he's not coming here. Because we're not gonna trust him in their hands.
Exactly.
We'll do a Skype lecture.
Exactly.
We're not gonna fly this brother all the way here to come stand up here and talk to people. Right? This is not a marketable thing. This is information that's supposed to be accessible to everybody, but you know, people don't accept it unless somebody's in front of them talking about it. Right? So we cut that off because we're not giving all these airline companies and stuff no more money. Right? We're not funding them anymore. Right? We use the free technology. Right? We're not going to talk about the European as the cracker. Because the owner of this place where we get free here. Right? We walk in and out the place with our fezzes and everything. And then some black guys are going to not want to come in here because it's a European store. Right? But they go support Walmart and everything else. Right? Go buy guns and whatever. Go kill a cracker. But they're not going to come get some information having to do with them. Then that's on them. As Moors, we have an obligation to get information to people. And on top of that, we have an obligation to the Prophet. Because if it wasn't for Noble Drew Ali doing the work that he did between 1913 and 1929, like we wouldn't even have a chance. We wouldn't even have a chance if it wasn't for what Noble Drew Ali came and did. So-called black man going and demanding the U.S. government to give back the Moroccan flag and get it. And that's in their records, in the Library of Congress, it's in there. It's in there that the Nation of Islam came out of the Moor Science Temple. The whole history. In the Library of Congress. But, you know, that's the Crackers Library, so they're not going to take that. Right? We have to see, like, really take serious what side of the fence that we want to be on right now. Because if you trust me, like I have a nationality, so it doesn't matter to me. If you don't have El Herbe on your name, whether it just makes sense to you and you do it, whether you go file some papers, whether you go to somewhere because you want to get a card, however it breaks down to you in your mind to do it. That's your salvation. Being able to be outside of their jurisdiction, even though you're in it. Because the order of the day is jurisdiction. The order of the day is, are you on the corporate side, where these guys are going to do corporate things and corporate activity? Or are you on the side that's de jour? Are you on the side that set up this whole thing? Right? All right. Okay, all right.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Kind of speaking on what you're speaking on is like, when you talk to so-called black people, and then you ask them about their nationality, they'll tell you every different bloodline that's in them except who they really are.
Yeah.
Not taking nothing from the ones that do know and say whatever.
Yeah.
They might even say they're black.
Yeah.
But before they even say they're black, well, I'm Indian, I got some white in me. I got some Chinese in me. You know, I got some black in me, but I never got my real nationality yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's really amazing. Like they're afraid of their own true nationality.
Right. Right.
Even though they might not have been Thai.
Exactly.
But even though, say that Black Power movement stuff, they'll still say, well, I got some Indian in me.
Yeah.
I got some
Exactly.
Chinese in me. There's some white in me.
Yeah.
More strength with those, what they got in them, and then their own strength, what's really
What's really what they have in
created.
them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to get that out.
Yeah. So, today's Skype presentation, brother's gonna let you know, as far as the details, how to get in touch with them, whatever, etc. Right? Save all your questions till probably about 6 o'clock. He's basically gonna go in from whenever we start until 6. And from what I'm hearing, there was some camera issues, so we have audio, but a lot of the visuals are going to be documents that will be screwed into, right? So,
Have your websites up.
Okay, just let me know which ones you have and then we'll go through there. Just want to introduce myself and I just want the audience there to know we appreciate all the effort the brothers have made to bring us to you all. And I am Chief Nanya-Shaabu, the At-sik-hata Nation of Yamasee Moors. Faith who's here, who'll be in on this conference call.
I am matriarch beyond At-sik-hata Nation
And the reason why I guess the subject came up was an interview that we did at West Edmonton Mall. And when we were there, the subject of commerce and whatnot pretty much came up, and that's essentially what's going on. The question that was asked is, what is Canada? Oh, tell that brother not to close that grate. I can't see the audience.
Oh, straight back up. On the other
Which
side.
one?
Oh,
Both.
Yeah, because the camera.
Yeah, I could see the people, and he closed that drink, I can't, now he just closed everything up, I can't see anybody. So what we're gonna do is to get right into it. The question was, who is Canada and who is the Queen? I wanna let the audience know that our nation is recognized by the United Nations as an Indigenous Peoples Organization. So we have documentation that's not only on file in the United Nations in what they corporately call New York, which is indigenously known as Nanya-Shaabu. We also have documentation on file in Geneva, Switzerland, as well as we have various reports that are put on file in Geneva, Switzerland. So the first thing we're going to deal with is the question, and what we're going to do is we're going to break down what is Canada, and what is the Queen in relation to that. And then my wife is going to deal with an aspect on contractual law pertaining to birth registrations, and then we're going to go straight into question and answers. So just bear with me a second here. I would have shown you all this, however, there's a technical issue, but my email is atsikhatayym@gmail.com. I gave it to the brother Tesbe, so I would trust that he conveys that, and the documentation that's been listed here, some of which you see on the web pages and some of which are not, which I was going to try to show you all this. However, that's going to be made available to everybody. The Interpretation Act of Canada, known as RSC 1985 CI-21. And we can always go back over this, and I can give everyone this precise codes for those that are trying to take notes, so they don't have to worry about missing anything. According to the Interpretation Act of Canada, Canada, for greater certainty, includes the internal waters of Canada and the territorial sea of Canada. And Canadian waters includes the territorial sea of Canada and the internal waters of Canada. And people say, well, the internal waters would be like, you're there in Toronto, like your Lake Ontarios, your Lake Hurons. That's Canada. That includes Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. That does not cover Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, or BC. Those lands were never ceded to Canada, which is a corporation. And Canada is a corporation that is registered in Washington, D.C., which is a District of Columbia. That's one of the first things. That's Section 35 of the Interpretation Act of Canada. It's 35.1 under definitions. That's the first thing. The next thing I was going to lead off with was the fact that I'm on the Prime Minister of Canada's email list, so any information that goes on pertaining to Canada, I get that directly from the Prime Minister. And you can't get on his list unless, you're somebody that's, they'll do it, they know who they're sending emails out to, in other words. They don't just send them out to anybody. One other thing real quickly here, in the Interpretations Act, I'm just jumping back to there for a real quick second here. This is on page 22 of the same act. It describes the United Kingdom means United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States means the United States of America. Now, it's interesting that this is in the Interpretations Act of Canada. And we'll get into why that would be there. Now, this is an email I got March 14th, 2011. And again, I can forward this email to all those who want to see it because we have it. And I'm going to read this out. This is Ottawa, Ontario, March 14th, 2011. This is a statement by the Prime Minister of Canada on Commonwealth Day. Prime Minister Stephen Harper issued the following statement to mark Commonwealth Day. Today, Canada celebrates a long and rewarding history with our Commonwealth partners around the world. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, the head of the organization, remains a symbol of the free association of independent countries. Together, we share mutual goals in the areas of democracy, development, conflict prevention, and commerce, as well as a strong record of collaborating to find solutions to global challenges. And let's see. Okay, and that is. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just reading that main paragraph where he stated that Canada, that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, the head of the organization. Now, an organization is a corporation, and that is a group of corporations that have been brought together for a particular purpose. He did not say she was the head of the country. He said she was the head of the organization. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, if you go onto Wikipedia and you go to corporation sole, a corporation sole is a legal entity consisting of a single sole incorporated office occupied by a single sole man or woman. This allows a corporation, usually a religious corporation or a commonwealth government, to pass vertically in time from one office holder to the next successor in office, giving the position legal continuity with each subsequent office holder having identical powers to their predecessor. Most corporations' sole are church-related. For example, the Archbishop of Canterbury, but some political offices of the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States are also corporations' sole. An example is that in the UK, many of the secretaries of state are corporations' sole. In contrast to a corporation sole, a corporation aggregate consists of two or more persons, typically run by a board of directors. Another difference is that corporations aggregate may have owners or stockholders, neither of which are a feature of a corporation sole. And I'm skipping down to the bottom of this page. The monarch of the Commonwealth realms is a corporation sole. She or he may possess property as monarch, which is distinct from the property he or she possesses personally, and may do acts as monarch distinguished from their personal act. In fact, Elizabeth II has several corporations sole. Her Majesty the Queen in right of the United Kingdom, Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada, Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Australia are all distinct corporations sold. Because Australia and Canada have federal systems of government, Elizabeth also has a distinct corporation sold for each of the Australian states and Canadian provinces. For example, Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Queensland and Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario. So this came off the Wikipedia. So if you type in corporation sold on Wikipedia, you're going to get the definition of corporation sold. This shows and proves the fact that it's corporations, which are fictitious entities that are running things. And this is how people are viewed as. They're not flesh and blood, they're not living, they're not even animate. They basically exist in a fictitious state or a dead state. You don't really exist. There's another document called DTax Canada. It's off the dtaxcanada.org website, and I'll just type that in here. Hold on, make sure I get that right. Okay, so this is where I've got the Canadian flag is a registered corporate symbol. And the brother, you can, in the meantime, you could like click on to that and just put that window up to the side, because and so people can see that's where I got that information from. Actually, what I'll do is I'll give you the link for the actual page of what I'm reading. So this way, people can see that.
Yeah, I think I got it.
Yeah, but I don't think you have the direct page though. You got the main page.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, hold on a second. We'll make this work. Okay, let me make sure. Okay, that should be, okay, there it is now. So you just click on that, and this will take you to what I'm reading, so the audience can see this. Okay, so you see it there, the Canadian flag, the registered corporate symbol?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, and it says, here's the incredible story, January 9, 2001. And this is a written communication on this issue is required by Forces Canada. January 10th. Everyone can see that, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. The communication is transmitted via email as shown below. Subject, trademark infringement. Pat, this is further to our conversation of January 9, 2002 regarding products identified on the Forces Canada internet site that were infringing on a registered trademark held by the Government of Canada. The flag symbol is a global identifier of the Government of Canada. It is used to identify federal institutions and is protected under the Trademarks Act, which is Section 9, 1N, III, the Act. The flag symbol was approved and entered as an official mark of the Government of Canada on the Trademarks Register held by the Canadian Trademarks Office, which is part of the Canadian Intellectual Property Office at Industry Canada on the 30th of September 1987. As discussed, there is evidence that Forces Canada internet site is advertising on the World Wide Web bearing the flag symbol of the Government of Canada. You are advised that the organization must take immediate corrective action with respect to infringement of this trademark. In addition, we require a written undertaking to immediately cease and desist displaying the flag symbol on the Forces Canada internet site and all associated public relations products. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, Jan Olin, fax number, email, phone number, Federal Identity Program, Treasury Board of Canada Secretary. So and then it says at the bottom, well folks, this is positive proof that Parliament is a private club that pretends to be a legitimate corporation and fraudulently assumes the role of Government of Canada. The Canadian flag is only a club banner. So all those people running around with the Canadian flag, and they're all Canadian and citizen, they're saying they don't really have a right to use that. And since they don't exist, they don't have any constitutional rights or any charter rights for that matter. The next document I have here which is to confirm that. And it was actually an admission by the former Alberta Premier Ed Stelmach. This was published on April 16th, 2012 in the Edmonton Sun. And if you Google Stelmach to return Nomi committee money, that's, that document will come up. This was the article, and I'm just gonna give it to the brother so you can, there we go. That's the article. So if you Google that, this article will come up that was published on the 16th of April. The last two paragraphs of what I'm going to read. This is quoting former Premier Ed Stelmach. We need strong leadership because this is really a $44 billion corporation. It's successful. We're selecting a CEO, and that selection will be made Monday, Stelmach said. They just had a so-called election here a couple weeks ago. Now, we're going to be selecting the next CEO of a very, very successful province. That's why you give serious thought to who's going to get to run this province for the next 4 years. I'm looking for a majority. We'll find out after Judgment Day what the ramifications are. So in the last two sentences, the last paragraph, the previous paragraph, he admitted that the provincial government, which would be all provincial governments, even the provincial government in Ontario, all the provincial premiers are nothing more than CEOs. Because he said $44 billion corporation. Then he realized he messed up, so he tried to double back and cover it up by saying, we're going to be selecting the next CEO of a very, very successful province. Well, hold on a second. If the province is du jour, then you can't have a chief executive officer of a corporation running a du jour province or a du jour government, because that would be called commercially a traverse. The fictitious cannot go into the real or the natural law, and the natural law cannot go into the fictitious. So this was an admission, and then he covered it up because he realized if he didn't do that, somebody's going to catch that, and they'll say, well, what do you mean? And nobody, of course, because the media people are bought and paid for, they're not going to question that. But he basically admitted that they're a corporation. So everything is being done corporately. Okay, so the next document is here. This is called, if you go on the Dun & Bradstreet website, I think it's www.dnb.com. I think that's the website. And if you type in the Crown, it comes up as Sovereign American Crown Trust. And the address is 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. Now, 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue is the U.S. Treasury as it's erroneously labeled. So the thing is, why is the Crown called Sovereign American Crown Trust? Because the United States is a trust corporation which falls underneath the corporation sole that's controlled by Elizabeth. And that was what we explained earlier. Again, we're going to go back over all this. I just want to give the people sitting there a background so they get a full comprehension of what we're dealing with here. So when we go into the question and answers, then you'll see the connection. The next thing is, most people, when you guys had Taj Tariq Bey on your conference call a few weeks back, and he read the bankruptcy of the United States, he read the whole thing that was off the internet. One thing that I'm going to add to that, there was an executive order 12803, and that's called infrastructure privatization. This was passed by George Bush Sr. April 30th of 1992. And in there, I'm just going to read just a couple sentences. And this is an executive order. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, and in order to ensure that the United States achieves the most beneficial economic use of its resources, It is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1, definitions. For purposes of this order, A, privatization means the disposition or transfer of an infrastructure asset, such as by sale or by long-term lease, from a state or local government to a private party. B, infrastructure asset means any asset financed in whole or in part by the federal government and needed for the functioning of the economy. Examples of such assets include but are not limited to roads, tunnels, bridges, electricity supply facilities, mass transit, rail transportation, airports, ports, waterways, water supply facilities, recycling and wastewater treatment facilities, solid waste disposal facilities, housing, schools, prisons, and hospitals. All that is being privatized. So when people are getting upset about whether they're being abused or what have you, they don't even realize they've been put in a real life Truman Show or a real life Monopoly game. And this again is Executive Order 12803. We'll get back to that, but I just wanted to read that. So since 1992, the United States has been selling off its so-called assets. And that would also be inclusive of the people, if they think they're a U.S. citizen or a citizen or an American citizen. Well, the Matriarch's going to get to that in a second. I know you're biting at the teeth. So now we're getting to the Royal Style and Titles Act. This is from Canada, and it's current to March 20th, 2012. Now the Royal Style and Titles Act. This is what it says in reference to the Queen, so-called. Therefore, Her Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and House of Commons of Canada, enact as follows. This act is decided as the Royal Style and Titles Act. The assent of the Parliament of Canada is hereby given to the issue by Her Majesty of her Royal Proclamation under the Great Seal of Canada, establishing for Canada the following style and titles, namely, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom, Canada, and her other realms and territories. Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. So I say that to say that this is the royal style and title. So this is what her official legislative title is. However, there is a court case called Regina versus Ja, and I'm going to give the website there for the brothers. Okay, this is the main page. Now, this was a case that happened in the UK, and the decision came out last year on the Gregorian calendar, May 11th. And in that decision, this filmmaker proved that Queen Elizabeth does not have any sovereignty. She violated her oath of office on June 2nd, 1953, and any legislative act passed by royal assent is null and void. Because in her oath, she stated that she would, to the best of her ability, uphold and maintain the laws of God. Now, by Black's Law definition, the terms of reference that we're going to be using for this will be a Hebrew Keyword Study Bible. We have a 1611 King James Bible because it is a Bible that is under letters patent, making it the law, and it is a contract that any of these sworn public officials are bound by. And so we have that. That's a term of reference, so people want to know how are you defining all these explanations. So it's the Hebrew Keyword Study Bible, the 1611 King James version of the Bible, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th Dictionary, Holy Tablets, Zigzag Zig, and Circle 7, and our Constitution, which is the Constitution of the At-sik-hata Nation of Yamasee Moors. And that's, of course, with reservations to add, but those are, I almost forgot, and the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, which is where Circle 7 originally came from. So that is, I would say for the time being, that is the, one other thing. before I'm gonna close up with this. And then my wife, the matriarch, is gonna lead into her, background, and then we're gonna go directly into questions and answers. This is, if you type in, this is December 12, 2011. 2 Canadians filed suit in federal Canadian court in Toronto against Her Majesty the Queen, the Canadian Minister of Finance, the Canadian Minister of National Revenue, the federal privatized Central Bank of Canada, and the Attorney General of Canada. The document is called Statement of Claim Canada Feds Case .pdf. I'm not sure if that's it, but I'll just type it in, and if it comes up, great. If not, then I'll make sure that I give the brother a proper link so that people can get that. And this is the type of information that has to be disseminated and given to the people in the audience because they need to know what's going on now. Okay, in the statement of claim, it explains how the Canadian government nullified the Bank of Canada Act, RSC 1985, CB-2, making loans at 0% interest to countries like Israel, laundered through the BIS, which is the Bank of International Settlements, and the IMF, International Monetary Fund. So in effect, Canada's citizens, their hospitals, roads, schools, libraries, and such were robbed to funnel money to pay Israel to pay for war crimes and the secret space program. In the statement of claim, it is explained this way. Parliament and the government, including the defendant, Minister of Finance, abdicating their duty to govern, and insofar as monetary, currency, and financial policies per se are concerned, and in turn as they affect socio-economic governance, have abdicated their constitutional duties and handed them over to those international private entities whose interests and directives are placed above the interests of Canadians and the primacy of the Constitution of Canada, not only with respect to specific provisions, but also with respect to the underlying constitutional imperative, and which provision reads, this is under section M, open accounts in a central bank in any other country or in the Bank for International Settlements accepts deposits from central banks in other countries, the Bank for International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and any other official international financial organization act as agent or mandatory or depository or correspondent for any of those banks or organizations and pay interest on any of those deposits. Full galactic disclosure means major overhauls in the courts of the politicians and the illegal central banks, including BIS, which is Bank of International Settlements, and IMF, which is an International Monetary Fund. It's a very complicated issue as far as that suit is concerned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the floor over to the matriarch, and as soon as she's done, then we're getting straight into the question and answers for the audience.
Greetings.
Greetings.
I'm going to be talking about the United States bankruptcy and the national emergency and the structure of the birth certificate. So I want to start with the bankruptcy. And the 14th Amendment only applies to artificial people, persons called U.S. citizens. And there are different groups in the states that have been arguing that issue about the taxes. But if you have the driving license, you have the birth certificate, you have any kind of license, incorporation, company, and then you're considered a U.S. citizen. And you're under the federal government's jurisdiction. Starting in the 1930s, when people were born, there were issued birth certificates from the state. This state certificate was recorded in the state records. After the birth certificate is recorded, it was sent to the Department of Commerce. Because the government is creating an artificial person and is just reporting the birth of their property. They will control and use and generate tax revenue, which they use the funds, or one of the funds to pay the bankruptcy off. But that hasn't happened till this day. Even the interest back in 1863 under President Lincoln has never been paid till this day. And the U.S. corporation, it is not legal for them to use private property to pay off public debt. The U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, said that the powers of the United States government is to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. So a lot of the Moorish brothers and sisters, they don't want to get into commerce, but everything is commerce, and it started back with Lincoln. In the United States Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Congress will have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. And the states would solve the problem of being sovereign again, but they have to unincorporate from underneath the federal government and reclaim it in sovereign status. But they're not going to do that because they used to public people, they're used to getting those funds from the Fed. A United States citizen is a subject or property of the federal government, namely spelled in all caps. And right now, Canada is the United States, and it has been since the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation in Article 11.
And Perpetual Union of 1774.
Right. So we're all in the same boat. That's why everything is the same between Canada and the United States. An American citizen is not a citizen, but is an individual sovereign. So you can't, there's never, ever been a American citizen. Either you're a sovereign or you're a citizen of the U.S. The Constitution won't protect the citizens of the U.S. And if you get real technical, you cannot be a sovereign and a citizen at the same time. You waive your sovereignty when you become a citizen, because a citizen always swears his allegiance to a government. It's like you can't be a queen or a king and be a subject at the same time. It's either or. You sovereigns have inalienable rights. Subjects have privileges. Then you can have to legal identity, the sovereign and the corporation, and you waive your inalienable right to be a corporate entity. I had got this information from, you can write this down, http://USA hyphen the hyphen, republic.com /revenue/true underscore history /chapter CHAP8.html. And you can pull up this information and you can read it at length and as many times as you want to. Here's the international law rule on page 156, and it deals with Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railway versus McGlynn, McGlynn 114 U.S. U period S period 542. And all states' laws are almost carbon copy of the federal laws. They are federal laws, and they're just mimicking. The District of Columbia was incorporated in 1871, and the federal usurpation started in earnest in 1885. So in the definition of the United States, the 50 states now are federal territories. They acquiesced and gave up the sovereignty. The 50 states are superior to the federal government, but because of the finances and the perks that they're getting from the states, they'll go along with it. The United States is still confined in 10 miles square by the Constitution. Through military usurpation, extend the military arm of the government to include the 50 states. The permanent absolute sovereign jurisdiction of the United States, that has been given up. But we're actually into a dictatorship and a socialist, because with the social aspect, we have the IRS, we have welfare, and we're getting benefits from the federal government. And they're not teaching the children in public schools. In this article, they say public school system. And this is how we got into this mess in the first place. The Declaration of Independence of 1776, they're not teaching the children about this document, and I'm sure that the majority of them don't even know what the Declaration of Independence is. And then there's the Constitution of the United States of America in 1787. And these things need to be taught in our schools, and this is why they don't want people to have their children homeschooled, because you can teach them whatever you want them to know. And then there was the whiskey tax and rebellion in 1792 to 1794. And the federal government imposed a whiskey tax of 25%, and the farmers rebelled because of that. And there's the Alien Act of 1798. This act of Congress delegated to the president virtually unlimited power to direct the conduct of nationals of hostile countries wherever the United States should be engaged in a declared war or its territory threatened with invasion. And this act is still on the books. And the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, and this has to do with President Lincoln. He declared a war and exercised his power as commander-in-chief, because the southern states walked out of Congress, and because they didn't have a quorum, Lincoln exercised his power as commander-in-chief and instituted martial law under the state of emergency. And Congress still has never convened under the Constitution. We're still in the martial law. And President Obama, he is doing all kind of diabolical things to the citizens of the United States. And the citizens of the United States are also under the War Powers Act. And so they're, these enemies of the state. And you can look at that movie, The State, with Will Smith in it.
Yeah.
Lincoln also funded the war entirely by issuing war bonds, T-bonds, T-bills, etc., which would essentially put the United States into bankruptcy in 1863. And one of the funding schemes used was the so-called 1040 bonds. These bonds were to run not less than 10 years, nor more than 40 years at 7.13% interest. To collect the interest on the 1040 bonds, a Form 1040 was used by the government. By 1864, the value of the bonds dropped by 39 cents on the dollar. In 1861, to collect the interest on these 1040 bonds, Congress created the Bureau of Internal Affairs. And to handle the bankruptcy, the comptroller of the Treasury was created in 1863. The United States government is in bankruptcy, as we all know. The United States went into receivership in 1933. And Congress is the trustees. The 14th Amendment in 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed while under military rule, therefore did not need to be properly ratified by the states. The 16th Amendment for income tax did not need to be properly ratified since it was passed by Congress exercising their military power. Every citizen, every person born or naturalized in the United States or subject to its jurisdiction is a citizen. The District of Columbia, created in 1871. Congress was reconvened under military order by Lincoln in 1861. This statute did not change, and in 1871, 10 years later, a new federal government was created by incorporation of District of Columbia. This new corporation is called United States. The old Congress ceased to exist in 1861, and the new Congress, looking at a different line. Even today, Congress does not sit by constitutional positive law, but by mere resolution, which is merely advisory, not compulsory. They merely indicate what public policy can be, but they carry no force of law with them except for themselves and their property. And here's the Trading with the Enemy Act of October 6, 1917. And it was passed in, this was passed during World War I when President Woodrow Wilson submitted to Congress and passed this bill. It also gave the government total authority over individuals defined as the enemy. And then the president may investigate, regulate, and prohibit under such rules and regulations that he may prescribe by means of license and taxes if you want to go fishing, and they have a tax for just about everything. The Emergency Banking Act, that was in 1933 by President Roosevelt, and that was for the banking, and they had a bank holiday. In March 1933, pursuant to the authority conferred subdivision B of section 5 of the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended and hereby approved and confirmed, Congress just wrote a blank check to the president. Anything he wanted to do was approved in advance. And you can look this case number up. It's 12 USC United States Code Section 95B. And this is still on the books today as well. In the subdivision, during the time of war or during any other time, a national emergency declared by the president doesn't have to have approval anymore by Congress. because they're under the military rules. And also, any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof, citizens of the United States were now included in the definition of enemy of the state. In 1917, due to World War I, Congress passed the Freedom of the Enemy Act as defined as other than citizens of the United States. So now everyone that is a citizen is an enemy of the United States. Today, the president is still engaging our forces in foreign countries without the consent of Congress, because the states gave up their sovereign status to become property to the United States. In 1933, any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof, a person is a corporation. The people of the United States.
Say that part again. I don't think you glossed over it. Say that part one more time.
With any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Remember, a person is a corporation. The people of the United States then became subject to the power of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. This act is still on the book, then it is still binding until the national emergency is resolved. But the states would have to do that. A person can do challenge what they're making them a slave, economic slave, or chattel property, and you can come out of that, but you have to do paperwork and you have to get into the commerce, because with the what they have done, even if you're not doing commercial things that you think you're not doing, that you should know the law, you should know commerce. President Roosevelt took office in March 4th, 1933, and during his term of office, he implemented hundreds of new national programs under the guise of national emergency. And that includes agriculture, banking, welfare, farming, etc. Emergency powers have been extended every year by the president for some reason or another, and they're still in force today. We are still under national emergency and under martial law, and President Obama made that very, very clear a few months ago. Senate Report 93-549, July 24th, 1973. Since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. These proclamations give force to 470 provisions of federal law. These hundreds of statutes delegate to the president extraordinary powers exercised by Congress, which affect the lives of American citizens in a host of all-encompassing manners. This vast range of powers taken together confer enough authority to rule this country without reference to normal constitutional process. And this report was acted upon by the 94th Congress. Public Law 94-112, September 14, 1976, to terminate certain authorities with respect to national emergency still in effect, and to provide for orderly implementation and termination of future national emergencies. There was one exception to this act, Section 502, parentheses A. This provision of this act shall not apply to the following provisions of law: the powers and authorities conferred thereby, and actions undertaken thereunder. Parentheses 1, Section 5B, October 6, 1917, as amended. 12 USC 95A, semicolon, 50 USC A, USC APT 5B. And I have here that can the martial law powers determine it? Yes, it can. But the people would have to want to do that, and the people in office would have to want to do it. And I don't think they will give up their luxury. And in June 5, 1933, this House Resolution 192, House Resolution 192. You can go into the Black Law Dictionary or Google that and get the information on that. Then they had brought in the Federal Reserve Bank, and the Federal Reserve notes are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. And the people of the United States are responsible to pay the debt.
Right.
And U.S. citizens are the collateral for the Federal Reserve notes in circulation. When the government declared bankruptcy, all commercial activity and the U.S. citizens themselves are pledged as collateral to pay off the debt. So the Federal Reserve notes that you're dealing with property of a corporation, a legal fiction of law. And a fiction can only deal with another artificial person. Martial law government are fictions created to manage civil affairs. All commercial activity are pledged as collateral for the debt, so the government has to find a way to make everything we did was in commerce. So it could tax and regulate everything we did, and they're doing that. You go to the supermarket, you have to pay tax. You go to the liquor store, you gotta pay tax. If you want your car registered, you have to pay tax. If you want to get married, you have to pay a tax. If your baby's born, you gotta pay a tax. So everything is a daggone tax. And with the birth certificate, it's just a certificate titled to the U.S. citizen, just like you have a car. So when you purchase a car, you register the car in the name of the state that you're in. So the car belongs to them, your baby belongs to them. And so you have to come out of her. For the states will claim or claiming this property as theirs by presumption. If you do not tell them that it is not their property, they're just going to assume that you're agreeing to submit to whatever they're asking for. And if you don't want to, some people don't register babies and they're forced, the government comes in, takes the children away, and give them a trustee and put them into a foster home. I want to get into more of that in a second. Then Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress, first session. The owner of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of the government, i.e. law, amounting to mere user, and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. It will represent a mortgage on a home or other property for all people of the nation. Therefore, the property of the United States are now the property of the government. Well, I think I said that wrong. Therefore, all property of the U.S. citizens was now the property of the government. You are just the mere user of the property by virtue of the government. The U.S. citizen was created to generate revenue. Your government is usurping your property so it can generate revenue to pay its bankruptcy back. State sovereignty lost. It appears that the 50 states are no longer sovereign states, but are mere subdivisions of the United States government. And this is how they lost it. The law said that every government which is sovereign within a sphere of action possesses as an inherent attribute the power to acquire property, to discover, to by agreement or treaty or by conquest, where U.S. citizens declared enemies of the federal government, where the states taken over by conquest or by agreement, as demonstrated by the military flag in the courtrooms or any other government building. You have the fringe flags. So we're going into the structure of a birth certificate. A certificate is a paper establishing an ownership claim.
Why don't you tell the sisters, because this is really what the sisters need to really hear, and no one can really hitting this home, and it's imperative. So as a matriarch, you really need to hit the home, the importance of this contract, because a lot of sisters don't know, and it's better that they hear it from a sister.
How many sisters do you have today, brother?
We have a good after room.
25.
34.
Let's come forward, please.
They want the sisters to go forward.
Sisters, energy. To the front.
Sorry.
To the front.
Okay.
Empresses.
Yeah.
Afraid. Need your energy.
Get ready to speak to the unborn.
Front.
No, which
Greetings, sisters.
Greetings, sister.
I'm going to give you the website for the structure of the birth certificate. Is HTT.
Yeah.
www.
I'm gonna type it in. I'll just type it fast. Just so you can get right in.
Volume. And put it up so people can write it down too.
You can still say it.
Main.
M-A-I-N. Yeah.
BIRC/MTL_birth/BIRC.htm.
Yeah, he's gonna put it up.
Some birth certificates and marriage certificates are now warehouse receipts. Oh.
They may not know that. You gotta break it down.
The sisters, do you have, are your children, chattel property, or are they sovereign or indigenous?
Speak up.
No, they're probably not indigenous yet.
Chattel.
All right, do they have birth certificates?
They would,
My children have them too. But this information was not given to the mothers at the time of birth. And they said, well, we'll keep a record and, so that if you need a birth certificate, you can come and get it. But they never tell you that you're giving your children to the state, to the federal government, so that they can pay back these debts. They run the debts up so high, I have to go back, maybe 10 generations down my list, and it still won't be paid for. Some birth and marriage certificates are now warehouse receipts printed on banknote paper, which may mark you and yours as chattel property or slaves, economic slaves, property of the banks that our government borrows from every day. A certificate is a paper establishing an ownership claim. Registration of birth began in 1915 by the Bureau of Census, with all states adopting the practice in 1933. But my mother was born in 25 and she has a birth certificate. Birth and marriage certificate or birth and marriage certificates are a form of securities called warehouse receipts. The items included on the warehouse receipt as described in UCC 7-202. The law which governs commercial paper and transactions which parallel a birth or marriage certificate. And this is some of the things that are required on that certificate: the location of warehouse where the goods are stored, the date of issue of the receipt, the consecutive number of the receipt down on the back or front of the certificate, usually in red numbers. And on the corporate certificate that I have of birth, both numbers are on front of that certificate. In some other places, it'll be on the front and the back. A description of the goods or of the package contained therein, the name, the sex, date of birth, etc. The signature of the warehouseman, which may be made by his authorized agent. A lot of times it's the doctors that sign the documents, or the municipal clerk, or the state registrar signature. Birth and marriage certificates are now appear to at least qualify as warehouse receipts under the Uniform Commercial Code, and you can look that up in Black's Law Dictionary. Warehouse receipts. A warehouse receipt, which is considered a document of title, may be a negotiable instrument and is often used by financing with inventory as security. And I found my corporate certificate online. I called.
That was done on Grand Street.
It's done in Grand Street for the federal investment.
No, that was Fidelity. Fidelity was We actually, it might be on the Facebook page there. If the brother goes into the notes, it might be there, but we posted it on Facebook. You might be, we got a lot of information or so, but we do have it there. Or if you go to Google, go into Google, and which one was it? That was the Fidelity Investment. You can type in matriarch speaks the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I think. The video is there.
And from the information that I received when we called Fidelity Investment, we got the dollar amount, the shares that were there, and
how many shares were outstanding, how much it was trading at, how much it was selling at, the value. What else was there? And the total value if you for cashing out.
And then they have two separate mutual funds for one certificate. And they have two separate managers and different people that can, do what they do when they're having this on the stock market. And when we spoke to Pennsylvania, they tried to get stupid with us. They didn't know what I was talking about, but they knew exactly what I was talking about. So I had to send them a letter. So I'm gonna move on. Since the U.S. went to bankrupt in 1933, the thing is with this is the United States went into receivership in 1933 because they were bankrupt back with Lincoln. And all the money had to be borrowed into existence. All states started using serial numbers, certified warehouse receipts of birth and marriage in order to pledge us as collateral against those loans and municipal bonds taken out with the Federal Reserve Bank. The full faith and credit of the American people is said to be that which backs the nation's debt. And those who have had jobs, you know about human resources at your workplace. So humans are resources, and that's why they have a resource office at most jobs. The government assigned a dollar value to the head of citizens began in July 14, 1862, when President Lincoln offered 6% interest bearing bonds to states who freed the slaves on a per head basis. This practice of valuating humans, in parentheses, cattle, continues to today with our current system of debt-based currency reliant upon the steady stream of new chattels to back it. Federal children. In 1921, the Federal Shepherd-Towner Maternity Act created the birth registration, which is now called birth certificate, and it was also known as Maternity Act. And they were, when the children got big enough or were going to school, and they have to get permission from the parents, and as they grow up, the daddy is the government. In 1921, the record of birth and names of children were entered into family Bibles, as were the records of marriage and death. And there's no law saying that you have to register children, you don't have to register your marriage, and that you can teach your children the truth about who they are. In 1933, bankruptcy was declared by, they went into receivership with President Roosevelt. The government of the then states full faith and credit to the states, including the citizenry, as collateral for loans and credit to the Federal Reserve System. In 1923, a suit was brought against federal office officials charged with the administration of the Maternity Act, who were citizens of another state, to enjoin them from forcing it, wherein the plaintiffs argued that the act was unconstitutional and that its purpose was to induce the states to yield sovereign rights reserved by them through the federal Constitution, 10th Amendment, and not granted to the federal government, and that the burden of the appropriations fall equally upon the state. The statute does not require a plaintiff to do or yield anything, and as no burden is imposed by it other than the taxation which falls not on the state but on her inhabitants. The act is unconstitutional. Its purpose to invest in agencies, it purports to invest in agencies of the federal government powers which are almost wholly undefined in matters relating to maternity and infancy, and to authorize appropriation of federal funds for the purpose of that act.
Any questions?
So, I have to close now, I still have more, but you have the information, just go to Google and, pull it up, and you can read it over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I've read this, these documents, and there's other things that, were on that site as well. So, any questions and answers? Any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions.
Where's the sheet at? Pass the test?
Just please, whoever's asking the questions, just make sure if they're directed toward myself or toward the main clerk, and so this way there's no.
Yeah, Tess will just read them up.
You just finish it up.
All right, I have one.
Go ahead.
Who has the paper?
No, Ronnie's just finish it up.
Yeah, I got one paper.
Well, ask yours first.
Just finish it
Yeah,
up on
I just
some-
wanna.
Ask yours first.
Ask a couple first.
Yeah, I'll just start on, you mentioned, sorry. Yeah, so you mentioned, the bankruptcy in 1861, correct?
I think it was 1861. It started in 1861 and ended in 1865.
Okay, so what was the significance of the Great Depression and what happened during that time? If there was already bankruptcy, what level was the economic situation brought to after that?
The bankruptcy happened with President Lincoln, where he borrowed the money for the war. He had T-bonds and the 1040 bonds to pay for the war, but it wasn't paid back. So that's what started the bankruptcy. And even the interest on those funds have never been paid till this day.
Okay, so in other words, even with, oh, the other thing I wanted to ask about, when you mentioned you looked up your bond for the birth certificate, is that an individual bond, or according to Taj, he mentioned that they're bundled by municipally bundled?
They are bundled together.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
It
So I
could,
think,
it could be 500, I don't know.
okay, yeah, because I think there's some confusion. Some people believe that they can look up their individual number for themselves, or for that.
Right. Once you have a copy of the certificate,
Yeah,
all Fidelity Investments have the certificate there, but you have both numbers. And with my particular case, is the number, the first three numbers are the first number at the top right corner. They use that, and on the bottom part, they use the first three numbers of that, those set of numbers. And that's how it's founded.
okay.
And the bonds are on Dun and Bradstreet.
Oh, and then you mentioned that the United States being a trust corporation, what kind of jurisdiction is that? And if so, if that jurisdiction is beyond a regular, ordinary corporate jurisdiction, then how does that relate to any trust that's set up between ourselves as private entities, or between us and the prophet?
You have to declare your indigenous status on paper and file it so it'll be in the public. And they have a sovereign American Crown Trust, but that is dubbed as the U.S. Treasury.
The Sovereign American Crown Trust. Okay,
Yes.
but is not what Drew Ali brought a trust, an express trust?
But this whole system is nothing but fraud. But my mother didn't know she even had a birth certificate. But I found this for her.
Yeah.
But they never gave full disclosure to the mothers because we are the ones who signed the contract. But we didn't know, when I had my children, I didn't know, I just signed the thing and submitted it. But I didn't know that I put my children in bondage to the federal United States. So it's fraud because you have to give any mother full disclosure before she signs that, but they don't. But they just want to have the chattel property to pay the debt. And I think the U.S. is like $15 trillion in debt and rising.
Right.
So,
It's higher than that now.
So, yeah. Okay.
Did I
So
answer you?
yeah, that was good because I have a bunch of questions here that we collected. So I'll go through them. First, how did you come into this information?
I don't know. I was fooling around with the computer.
Found you.
And here it was.
No, in general. In general.
In general, I guess they're asking like.
I'm not that well abreast in the computer, but like every now and then the creator says, here, I want to give you this gift.
Yeah.
That's how I got it.
Okay.
Islam.
Islam.
So, I want to go back for a second.
Yeah.
With the Civil War in 1861, did I give you the Liber Laws of 1863? It's Lieber.
Okay.
Laws of 1863.
Laws of 1863.
Right. See, my mate, he knows a lot of stuff about the computer, and he knows how to navigate around. I'm not like that. So, and I'm thankful for the Creator for giving me these perks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're just going back to that first question. I think it was more intended like, what's your story behind, you know what I mean, getting you being at where you're at? Both of you being at where you're at.
Well, we have a lot of things since I've been on this path. You know, I was in jail, you know, for nothing. They wanted me to have psych assessment, you know, and how many psych assessment they wanted you to have? About 5 to 6. So they do stuff to make you quit and go along with their program. But, you know, if you do something to me, I'm going to make you prove it. And so when the last time I got locked up, it was a thing where I didn't have any writing material or anything, but my mate took care of that. And then when he was, you know, kidnapped, and I was doing stuff for him. So we're like in this thing together, and we never ever acquiesced. And we just kept moving forward. We have our nation, we got our flag, and we got our notary department, we have an ambassador. So we have a lot of things. But it's, I can't go back. And I'm looking at my children and my grandchildren. I don't want them in bondage the rest of their lives and struggling and scratch and trying to make ends meet.
Islam.
Okay. What should Moore's activity be with this information? I guess what the question is asking, like what could or should be done with the information that you presented to us?
I can't tell you what you should do with that. I only know what I'm going to do with it. But, you know, read the material, and you're a group, you know, you sit down at the round table and discuss it, and then come up with a decision as to what direction you want to go into. I can't tell you that.
Okay.
Well, here, I'll interject here. I'm going to answer it this way. First of all,
when they get into the issue of Moors Science Temple Inc., Great Seal, Moors National Republic State, here's the problem. The problem is the Constitution has been suspended. When you go in a courtroom, it's suspended. It's been suspended since 1933, Public Law 89-719. That's the first thing. The second thing is they're saying, well, the Prophet Noble Drali, well, we have a problem because as you saw on one of the videos that's on the internet right now called The Church and the Law, which is a DVD excerpt that I put up there, there's Moors going around claiming Prophet Noble Drali and don't have his signature on the back of our authority. But then they're running around saying, we got authority, we got authority. That was information from 1928. This is 2012. This is almost going on 100 years. And they're still in a mindset of 1928. The Congress is not even bound by the Constitution. This is called For the Record. This is from Congressional Record page 83220. And it's a statement of Carl B. Ricks of Milwaukee, former president of the American Bar Association, entered into the House record by the Honorable Lawrence H. Smith of Wisconsin on May 11, 1955. Congress, if you have the book, if anybody has the book, Behold a Pale Horse by Bill Cooper, this is where this came out of his book. Congress is no longer bound by its constitutional system of delegated powers. Its only test is under the obligatory power to promote human rights in these fields of endeavor: civil, political, economic, social, and cultural. These are found in Articles 55 and 56 of the Charter of the United Nations, a ratified and approved treaty. See the UN Participation Act of 1945, signed by President Harry S. Truman with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. United Nations Resolution 1760. The new test of constitutionality will apply to all legislation by Congress since 1945, which deals with any of the 5 fields of endeavor. Any judge deciding on the validity of legislation must have 2 books before him. 1, the Constitution of the United States, and 2, the Charter of the United Nations. If he does not find authority for the act in the Constitution, he will find it in the Charter. This is C. Justice Holmes' Supreme Court migratory bird case. The authority was not found in the Constitution, it was found in the treaty with Great Britain. This is regarding a particular case, the migratory bird case. So when Moors talk about Moors Science Temple Inc., we're a nation. At-sik-hata Nation is a nation. We're not a movement. We are secure parties. Everybody in our nation is secure. They get their UCC-1s or PPSAs filed. We generally don't even do this to people that are chattel. But the brother saw the video and we said no. Obviously, there is an essence in there that says the people need to know this. The Queen is a fraud. The judges are fraudulent. The RCMP, all of them have fraudulent oaths. And the essence of this question was, who is the Queen and what is it to Canada? There is Canada, Mexico, and the United States. We have exported them to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And the website, I'll put that here for those that want to see it. And the problem here is, Moors are talking about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. How can they sit there and stay silent when we have a lien on the White House? We faxed Barack Obama. We put our information on Facebook, Pleasant Bay, Africa Bambaataa, Professor Griff. Who else was there? ISIS out of, I guess they're out of Detroit.
Yes.
Great Seal. All of these so-called organizations I've mentioned, I have communicated them in one way or another and informed them, and nobody is saying anything. Everybody is staying silent. So the thing is, why are they staying silent when it's a known fact there's no more courts anymore? The only thing they got to do is go to this website and sit there and ask the judge, aside from the fact that the judges don't have any oaths, so you first of all got to get their oath. Nobody is challenging that. The Moors Science Temple of America doesn't even, they're telling the people, you're underneath the United States of America, which is a religious corporation, that's controlled by the Vatican. The United States is the federal corporation under Title 28 USC Section 3002, paragraph 15. So why is it that the Moors are not saying, look, what we're going to have to do is we have to write the Vatican. If they're claiming the Moroccan flag, they have to be contacting the president of France because of the 1783 Treaty of Versailles. And because if they're going to invoke the 1786 Treaty of Marrakesh and they're having any of these commercial issues here, they have to inform whoever is running Morocco or the president of Morocco or the so-called Sultan or Emperor of Morocco. So if they're not going to deal with the foundation of the fact that when everything in 1932 was reorganized, because of Prophet Noble Drew getting the land back, they know the lease on the island is up in 2004. That means that they haven't gone anywhere. They're still on the good ship USA, which is now located geographically in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, so that kind of, so your perspective is from the perspective of the liens that you put on all of these fraudulent entities as pertains to they're conducting a fraud on our land.
It's not a perspective. This is a commercial fact. I wrote the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't responded. The matriarch has a video on the internet where she did a video notice to the Queen. Elizabeth, well, I can't call her Queen, she's Elizabeth. Elizabeth is not responding. Why? Because then we find out the case called Regina versus Job. The guy proved that she has no sovereignty. So when court cases come, you're not even dealing with charges. You're like, look, I'm challenging her sovereignty because of the fact she violated her oath. Part of her oath, she said, I will to the utmost of my power maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel. The things which I have here before promised, I will perform and keep, so help me God. Right? And I'm going to give you the link so the people can actually see her oath. So when you go up into these vessels, because they're vessels in dry dock, idle in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, we know this is all fraud, but the thing is, nobody is bringing the documentation to prove that. And we say, we've done it, and not only have we done it, we have given international public notice via internet, registered mails, and what have you. I just sent you the link. So this is not a perspective, this is a commercial fact. But if Moors keep using Chicago, Illinois Republic, if they use Atlanta, or they use Georgia Republic, Illinois Republic, New York Republic, the Constitution, they would have to go back and go beyond that. That's why a lot of these guys who are talking sovereignty up in the northern part of Turtle Island, because that's what this originally was, those guys want to go back to the Republic because they can't go to England because the original Europeans are us, the original Italians are us, the original Spanish are us. Right. They can't go back there, so they say, I'm a man on the land. Okay, what was the name of the land, or what is its geographic coordinates?
Nice question.
Then they can't give it to you. Then they start getting all quiet because they know this is our land. And don't let even the Aboriginals up here as well fool you. We are the original Indians.
Islam.
So this is the problem. So the thing is, and all these grand sheikhs, grand sheikesses, what have you, do all this stuff, they're not answering the question of, okay, we put a lien on the White House, we got it signed by Condoleezza Rice, she's the highest officer underneath, next to the president, signed off on our instruments. How come none of these Moors are saying, let's work together to do this? Because then what's going to happen is it's going to come up that 90% of those so-called leaders, one, they don't know what the heck they're doing, and two, some of them is probably agents.
Yeah.
You can't sit there, you cannot sit there when we're putting all this type of information out, publishing it on the internet, and none of these Moorish scholars got nothing to say. And I had brought up Professor Griff for a reason, because he's talking about Illuminati. That's us anyway. But the thing is, we met Griff in Atlanta and gave him information. And he was traveling back and forth doing his business, and we never, they had a place in Atlanta where they allow people to bring stuff to the community. So we were gonna educate people on UCC. We couldn't get put on. The first meeting of the Moors that they had in New York in the Black National Theater in Harlem, I was there for that. I met Taj. It was great experience and everything. I put my name down to speak on Uniform Commercial Code. Nope, they didn't want to talk about it. Now, 2 years ago, I get Taj's guys calling me, asking me about UCC. I said, well, if your man says, you know, not to do UCC, I can't do nothing. And if you're contracted with him, I can't tell you anything unless you change up your contracts. Because now that the U.S. Constitution is void in federal court, what are these Moors doing filing in federal court when the Constitution is suspended and they're going into an admiralty proceeding? We created admiralty law, but they're trying to do constitutional admiralty law. It's not going to work. The United States of America is a religious corporation underneath the Vatican. The U.S. is a federal corporation which falls underneath a corporation sole controlled by the Queen. The Queen controls the Social Security Act. So guess what that means? What this means is they have been giving people in these temples an illusion of freedom. They are still in on the plantation. At-sik-hata Nation is not in or on the plantation. We are on the land. That's why I read the paperwork for you from the Prime Minister of Canada. The Prime Minister, I get Bob Ray's emailing me asking me for donations. I'm like, what are you asking me for donations for? Why is he emailing me? Because they know that they're on our land.
Okay, I'm gonna get to a couple more, well, there's more than a few, so we'll try to get to these.
Meanwhile,
Just to extend on that, why would the presidents take an oath to a suspended constitution? If it's suspended since '33, and can you elaborate on how it was suspended?
Well, let's go back. If we accept that the Prophet Noble Drew was the prophet, and we accept that he got the land back at the Havana Conference, which nobody has been able to get the documentation. I've been looking for it. But if we accept that for value and consideration as a fact, that would only stand the reason why the dollar, the U.S. went and declared bankruptcy, a stock market crash in 1929. Then they had to reorganize everything in 1933, which was called the New Deal under President Roosevelt. Now, the question is, why would they swear a false oath? Because they have to keep the fraud going. If the people sitting in there now know, like, for example, Harper closed Parliament. I have a lien, our nation has a lien on the government of Canada right now. He closed Parliament and threatened to kill Jean, who's from Haiti. If you don't let me close it, I'm going to phone the Queen. Now there's a girl in Montreal who wrote the Queen twice telling her to get rid of Harper, and the Queen won't get rid of her. Why? Because the Queen never had the Stone of Destiny, and she was fraudulent on her oath of office. So she violated her oath. So Elizabeth is not the Queen. She's a charlatan. She's a fraud. She has no clothes.
How is that info connected to Dave Miller or your info?
Well, David Windmiller, I know David Windmiller. I've spoken with David Windmiller. He knows who I am. I know who David Windmiller is. But the quantum is something that's way out there. Some people, like, when I went to that first meeting of the Moors, a sister brought up the bankruptcy, like the matriarch did here, and went in depth on the bankruptcy of the United States and the fraud. And there were sisters who were Moors, were freaking out and were hissing at her literally. They didn't want to hear it. And the word I was getting was a lot of Moors, like from the Moorish National Republic state, were saying don't follow UCC 1. So my thing is, if they're saying that UCC 1 is the white man's stuff, what are they doing carrying Federal Reserve notes in their pocket and then bragging, oh, that's our symbol on the dollar bill? How come you're not suing the Federal Reserve, which is a private company and not public, for copyright infringement? Because if that's our symbol, it falls under natural law. And if you're saying it's yours, you're supposed to be filing suit for them putting an Egyptian pyramid, which is us, on a dollar bill, using that as transactions, knowing that they ain't got no money, and then putting people into bondage. This is what these grand chefs, sheikesses are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be saying, look, we're going to file this suit, we're going to do this paperwork, we're going to put these liens, call it for what it is, slavery. Saying the word nigger is actually a word of power because it goes back to the Nagas serpents, which were the beings. And you know, if you any of y'all in there know people from the Philippines, they said there's people underneath the water off the coast of Philippines that live in the water that are darker than that brother over there that I see to the right with the plaid shirt on and the white shirt, dark as or darker than, that come out the water, and they say they live in the water. And they teach them. So the Filipinos who come over here, they try to front like they don't know. Everybody on this planet knows we're the deities, and we sitting there playing this candy game, Monopoly. Well, I'm going to be an exotic Negro on the plantation. No, call it for what it is. The queen is a fraud. The whole thing is fraud. It's slavery. Now, okay, what is the workable solution to get out of it? You file a UCC-1. You can't use the clock of destiny in the courtroom, they'll laugh you out of it. You can't use Circle 7 in the courtroom, they will laugh you out of there. Because it has no bearing in an admiralty jurisdiction. So, what the matriarch told the sisters, yes, they have us, the only ones, the first ones that have to make the major move in terms of acknowledging this as slavery is the woman, because the devil did not make the contract with the men, he made the contract with the woman because that's what the devil did in the Garden of Eden. He didn't approach Adam because Adam was disagreeable. He approached the woman because she was agreeable. So the ones who have to fix this is the sisters, but the sisters need to get the information, and if they're not getting the information, we ain't gonna get out of this, as far as those who still think that they've got everything together. So all that has to happen.
The reason why I'm gonna ask this question, and there was a couple of the people here too. In the past, we've had I wouldn't say issues, but because we're all learning and we're all studying, that was a big topic of study. The UCCs. We learned from some scholars, some of our scholars, of the dangers of the UCC. Right? But then at the same time, we know of some of these similar scholars, it's not that they're saying that they don't want to teach the UCCs because of all the controversy, the confusion, the fact that you need to know your basics before you start exercising in dealing with liens and stuff like that. But one of the major keys was how I'll just speak for myself, how I personally understood it was UCC filing paperwork, or UCC filing one paperwork dealt with putting a lien on, let's say, the straw man. But where I need some clarification, at least me, is that if the straw man is not yours, and it's actually a corporation owned by, let's say, them, and you attempt to put a lien on something, is not law that you must put a lien, you can only put a lien on something that is your property and that you can prove it. Anything otherwise would be a fraud or conspiring to extract revenues from something that is not yours. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, I can clarify that.
Thank you, brother.
I can clarify that quite simply.
Thank you.
It's called trafficking in human cargo. But if you're a domestic Canadian citizen, you can't go with the trafficking in human cargo because that's international law. So therefore, you're stuck. And if they turn around and say, we feel it's not good and the courts are screwed up here anyway, you're not going to advance with that. Hence the reason why Moors, again, the Moors from the Moorish Science Temple, and not only y'all, and it's not focusing, Moors in general. How can there be Moors in New York City, quote unquote, and they don't go to the United Nations yet? Malcolm X said, if we're going to make a petition to the UN for all the injustices against us, we're going to have to go to the United Nations. So therefore, Nubians are still in a no status, no nationality status. Now, if they proclaim themselves Moor, that's fine. However, there's still an issue. The temple is still connected by an adhesion contract to the flagship corporation of the United States of America. I have read the Illinois statutes. They're supposed to be making passports, they're supposed to be making quote-unquote driver's license, etc. The reason why a lot of these grand chefs say they don't want to teach it, they're lying. They can't teach it because they don't know it. Say you don't know what the UCC is, say you have no experience. That's why when we do stuff, I publish it on the Facebook for people to see, this is what I did. Well, how do I get out? So this is my Melaninite website of what I did, like putting in a statutory declaration and getting it signed by an MLA. And then from there, there's other documents that we'll get into that. However, the thing is this, as long as Nubians don't want to accept the fact that they're caught up in a real life monopoly game, they're never going to see this. And this type of information is not for everybody. That's why I told you, we generally do not come out for people that are chattel property. If they want to learn, that's one thing. But we generally don't even do this because none of the grand chefs, none of them can answer. They can't look at our paperwork. Like I said, I spoke with Pleasant Bay, and he was excited, but then something happened, it faded off, and now all I'm hearing is everyone's talking about the U.S. How come all these Moors are quiet? The Constitution is suspended in federal court. They should be screaming and ranting and raving about why is the Constitution suspended. So that means there's an element that's been put in there to dissuade people from knowing the fact that, no, you never were free. It's been an illusion of freedom. That's why things are the way they are. So therefore, when we say, okay, there's no Canada, there's no Mexico, there's no United States, we exported them, we faxed President, corporate CEO Barack Obama, what did he say? Say nothing. And it's not so much him, because there's people behind him that's moving his strings. So you can't look at Barack as the bad guy entirely. He was up in there because somebody wanted him there, not because he chose to be there, because then they could have got Jesse Jackson, but Jesse Jackson's fingers are already still tainted for killing Martin Luther King, so they can't put him up in there.
Jesse.
Whoa. So what do you think about Moors and Canaanland doing treaties with each other?
There is not Canaan land. Let's get this right. Let's fix that mistake. First of all, this is Turtle Island. Canaan is in the Middle East, west of Jerusalem. That is Canaan. You ask any person who's Aboriginal, what was the name of here? From here, Georgia, California, they will tell you this is Great Turtle Island. And the areas within Turtle Island had their own indigenous names. So if you start referring to, for example, let's say Toronto. Toronto could be the indigenous name, I'm not sure. But let's say it is for argument's sake. If it is, you have to refer to it as such. If it's not, then you have to find the original name and you have to use it. You cannot be using zip codes and apartment number 305 and then talking about your indigenous. That's called traversing. That's mixing and matching. And if you use their terms as a basis of identifying yourself, but say it's soft and they're laughing because it's from a contractual standpoint, now you're in commercial dishonor. So it's not Canaanland. I don't know where you guys got that from. It is not. It's Turtle Island. And I have a document. That's why, excuse me, I have to send you the folder. I have a document where a guy got a document notarized in Toronto by a barrister. He sent it to Elizabeth, and in his jurat he used on the southern province of Ontario, previous formerly known At-sik-hata, Turtle Island, land of the frogs. And he got a barrister in Toronto to sign off and seal that for him. And he sent that to the Queen, and she responded to him. This is not Canaan land. Moabites? No, you're not Moabites either. Moab was a product of incest. And according to the Hebrew Keyword Study Bible, on page 29, this is a King James, it says, according to this key, it said the Moabites were the descendants of Lot. Now they miss out, he had incest with his daughters, but that's what it was. And were neighbors of the Amorites on the opposite side of the Arnon River. This is in Numbers 21:13. They possessed many great cities and were prosperous, arrogant, and idolatrous. They were mighty men of war. The Amorites deprived them of a large part of their territory. The Moabites refused to let Israel pass through their country and were so greatly impressed and alarmed by the multitude of the Israelite army that along with Midian, they sent Balaam to curse it. Subsequently, Israel was enticed into idolatry and even intermarried with them. They were always hostile to Israel until King Saul subdued them. Later they became tributary to David and succeeding Jewish kings. But they finally joined Babylon against Judah. On several occasions, God pronounced judgments against Moab. So, calling oneself a Moabite, that is from...
Well, there are no Moabites, right? Because, I mean, that was us anyway. So,
Well,
speaking of... No, there's nobody walking around today as a Moabite.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, if I talk to any Moor from any stripe, and I say, what are you? They say, we're Moabites. Oh, question 101 from Prophet Noble Valley. I said, oh, a Moabite? I said, so you're a product of incest? I said, because see, the Europeans, well, I can't call them the Caucasians, because they're not the real Europeans. Right. The real Europeans are us, but the Caucasians take that Bible to heart, especially the fanatics. So what I just read to you is what they view you as fanatic, and they look at you as idolatrous. So you can't take on the term Moabite. You have to use the ancient terms, whether it was Tamaraean, whether it was Easter Island. More you can use what have you, but not Moabite. And again, the Bible, which is what's quoted from the Prophet Noble Ali in certain parts. The Circle 7 came from the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ in 1908. So the Circle 7 doesn't have a copyright on it. So therefore the prophet got it from there. So that Circle 7 is incorrect, but it served its purpose in 1928. This is 2012. This is not 1928. This is not the Millennium Minstrel Show anymore. This is the real deal, because how do they explain when I have the Pennsylvania Gazette says there was never a red man on the continent, and it talks about the American Negroes of Korenka and Choco. The Great Level Plain, 900 miles long, 90 wide, separating the Andes of South America from the mountains of Panama, were black and with woolly heads in 1506. They are mentioned by Dangleria and all the early accurate writers. The last two travelers who have seen these Negroes are Stevenson, and that was 20 years travel in South America. London and Millennium travels in Colombia, Paris, 1824. Then they even give a description of us.
Yeah.
So when you claim your inalienable rights, you're not changing the system. You're telling them this is who you are. However, there is a process of which you in other words, all the people there who got state, province of Ontario driver's license, IDs, etc. That's a vessel. That ain't you. That's a vessel. But you become the trustee holding that instrument. So now you become liable. It's just like an agent. If you play basketball, play sports, these athletes have agents. That's why a lot of these athletes, they don't handle the negotiations. They send a representative to do that.
Yeah. So I just have maybe 5 more questions. So we only have about 5 minutes. I'll get through them. That brings me to my next question. Is it necessary to have a tribal or family name to tie a tribe to prove your Moorish nationality, which I guess you spoke on? So if you want to just touch on that.
Yeah. Yes, you have to, because they said the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was born on a Cherokee reservation in North Carolina, and that's the Croatan and the Lumbee Indians. The first Indians were us. We went to, that was in Georgia. We went to that powwow they had at Okmulgee, and the brother there said, oh, back in the days we used to wear turbans. This is a so-called Native American Indian saying that. Next question.
Up here too, they say it too.
If we come out of our artificial person status, is the Queen obligated to pay retroactively to Moors or other oppressed groups the full value of the birth certificate, bond, and related stocks plus earned interest?
In accordance with international law, and that's why you're supposed to have the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. That's what you're supposed to have, because you can't get any claims if you're domestic chattel property of Canada. Canada's a corporation registered in Washington, D.C. Canada and the United States were together since 1778, as the matriarch stated in Article 11. We published that, that's on my Melaninite site, the first one, and we have it posted all over Facebook. All you have to do is Google the matriarch's name or Google my name, and that information will come up. But the thing is, it's there. These Moors are being domestic and are not being international. And if the prophet said you have to be recognized internationally by the international nations, how can they say they're Moabites? How can they say that they have no, what do you call it? They don't have any tribal affiliation. Saying you're Moor, okay, so now what, because some of the people in there are from different, their lineage is from different islands.
Yeah.
Some probably from Trinidad, Guyana, etc. So if you don't know you're a Carib or a Garifuna or Arawak Indian, and if I say, okay, you're from the islands, the first thing they'll say is, I am a West Indian. How come they're saying they're a West Indian with nappy hair? Because the first Indians were us. Next question.
Okay, can you speak on the British Empire and jurisdiction in a global context?
This is where the responsibility falls on the Grand Sheiks, the Adepts, and all that, as they call it, the Moorish Temple. They're supposed to be writing the Vatican, they're supposed to be writing the Queen. They ain't writing the Vatican, they ain't writing the Queen.
Right.
They're supposed to be writing them. The Pope has a Moor's head on his coat of arms. They're advertising, but they know the people are considered functionally illiterate and mentally dead. You got a white man with a Moor's head on his coat of arms because he's from Germany, and we were in Germany before it became Germany. Our head's still there in the coat of arms. The Grand Chefs are supposed to say, look, we're going to file these claims, and we're going to write this stuff to the Vatican, we're going to write this to the Queen. They're not doing that. Even on a domestic level, you have to write the so-called premier. Now you know the premier of Ontario is a CEO. You have to write them and say, this is who I am, this is who I am not, send it registered mail, boom. Now you have a contract, and then you publish that in the public because they'll make, just to make sure it doesn't disappear, that you have record, you communicated with them, and they have to answer your questions, which they won't because they're fiction.
Okay, so, can you speak on what is happening with economic collapses and why, and the potential of war if you follow that stuff?
Well, of course we're following. We saw what happened with J.P. Morgan. They claimed they had a $2 billion loss, but we found out it was a lie. It was a $4 billion loss over 6 weeks. And we did the same thing that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali did back in 1928. They wanted to reboot the Matrix. We stepped in and said, no, you're not, and we got Condoleezza Rice to sign off on it. So I put down a 999 trillion euro bond, filed it with the city of Edmonton, which is on Treaty 6 land. Then we turned around and what did we do? We published that, filed it, I sent it to the Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico, who's the real alien property custodian. And I've contacted the Central Bank of China, this IMF, the Federal Reserve. We have liens on the Federal Reserve right now. I have faxed Ben Bernanke. Of course, he's not going to say nothing. They know they have to give the planet back to us. But all the Nubians that are out there BSing around are not going to, because it's about contract. Let me see your contract. You got an Ontario driver's license? Okay, let me see what's on the back of it. You don't have a flag, they don't have a postage stamp, they don't have their thumbprint, which makes their document complete in maritime commerce, which would make that prove that that's nothing more than a vessel. Then you're stuck with mammon. You go down with the ship. And this is why I say it's the responsibility of all the so-called Moorish scholars who are in leadership. This is why we said, look, this is going to get done. But the thing is, the sisters have to know. That's why the matriarch, I had told her, I said, you got to tell these sisters. And when the sisters will get up, there's no real men out there. Unfortunately, that's the case. There isn't. there aren't none. We're deities. The man, you call it the Caucasian, you call it the black man, really is the East Indian with the straight hair. That's the black man. We're the deities. But the thing is, the sisters have to get up, and unfortunately, they manipulate them with Lady Clairol, and then you got Nicki Minaj looking like blonde hair. Who is the next one? Mary J. Blige. And I comprehend they're in that music industry, so they got to do what they got to do. But the thing is, they've already sold out. But Beyonce, all that stuff they're talking about, Illuminati and the pyramids and Baphomet, the real god of Mendes is in Egypt, and he's not even the real deity. The real deity, her name was Hat-mi-het. She is an Egyptian deity, a Nubian woman, and if you Google her, she will be sitting down with her left hand over her right breast. She was the original deity. She's got a fish on her head. She's the original deity of Mendes. But some white guy came and drew some goat, and then all of a sudden everyone, oh, that's the devil. So that ain't no devil, that ain't nothing. That's what some guy imagined that in his head. So this is what has to happen. To get out of it, you've got to know commerce. You're on contract. Some of you in there got Canadian notes in there in your pocket. That means you're under contract. So if you don't have anything out there, it's not going to work. Next question.
Okay, the difference between nationalization and naturalization, and to whom or to what does it apply?
Okay, the nationalization as defined by the Moorish Science Temple is merely doing what the President Abraham Lincoln did with the Emancipation Proclamation. He only took the Nubians from one plantation and put them on another plantation. It's the same thing, because if they say, what's your nationality? Moorish American. Moorish is an adjective, it's not a noun, first of all. And American was used in a derogatory sense against the indigenous, which was us. However, since they changed everything and claimed it, you can't claim the word American. You have to use the word that identifies with who you are. So the original and indigenous name of Toronto, if Toronto is not it, you have to use that name. You cannot use Toronto because Toronto is a corporation underneath the province of Ontario, which is a sub-corporation of the Corporation of Canada, registered in Washington, D.C., which is underneath the control of a fraud calling herself Queen, which is Elizabeth. So now, when all these guys are talking about I'm going to be real quick. When they talk about nationalization, they're not nationalizing anything. You have to have land, language, and culture. Most of these Moors deal with English. They can't even speak Arabic. They don't even speak an indigenous language. Sure. Next.
And then naturalization.
Naturalization is naturalized by who? Nobody can naturalize you. If you're under natural law, like the gods of laws of God, as in the Queen's Oath, when you look in Black's Law Dictionary, it says that is the laws of God is known as natural law.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm sure they do. Well, okay, the Matriarch says they should have a Black's Law Dictionary, so
Yes,
people out there, y'all better start getting the Black's Law Dictionary. That is the decipher language that they use to keep Nubians in bondage because you don't know the law. So there they can take liberty with you and do what they want because of your ignorance.
Okay.
So now, yeah, go on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just touching on naturalization. That's it. Next question.
Yeah, the last one here. I guess the question is, was it that Drew Ali, what supposedly happened with Drew Ali in 1928, was that a cause of the bankruptcy in 29?
Yes, it was in 28, what he did in Havana. Again, it's still unverified, and that's what people are trying to find. Yes. Everyone's trying to get the document. The last I heard is that it's in a vault somewhere in Switzerland. However, the thing is, they did declare bankruptcy in the stock market crash was in 29. We currently have liens on the Federal Reserve, Government of Canada, Province of Alberta. We have a lien on Elizabeth. We have a lien on the Pentagon, a lien on the Vatican. And now the Pentagon is kicking soldiers out, calling it involuntary discharge because they can't pay them. The Vatican's under investigation. Their bank account in Milan got closed down. I faxed Pope Benedict and told him what the deal was. He stayed silent. This is what the other Moorish groups were supposed to jump on and start doing the same thing. Instead, they stayed silent. So then it's taken me this long to realize that most of those Moorish scholars and grand sheikhs are agents and they're straight up scared. Don't play with freedom. This is, and I will say it to the audience, if this is too much when you leave, go home, have a nice have a nice time and everything. That's it. This is real deal Matrix. This is not no joke. This is not to be playing around with. They got Nubians in bondage, and now they're not even hiding it anymore. They're putting it in your face, and they know you're going to do what? Absolutely nothing.
Yes.
So when they whip Nubians, they shouldn't be complaining about. Look at what happened with Zimmerman in in Florida. They used the Mishnah code to get it off, and since then you haven't heard anything. And that allows them to do that because the Jews are the ones, because Canada is controlled by the Jews.
Make sure we're out.
Okay, one more quick one.
Hey, peace, bro.
Peace.
All right. I seen something on YouTube the other day that said you're not Moorish, call yourself American. So I was wondering what your what you think about that. Like, are we to call ourselves Moorish, or are we to call ourselves Americans, or?
What you should say is indigenous.
Okay.
You can't claim that. No race on this planet, every race on this planet comes from the Nubian woman, black woman if they want to use that term.
Okay.
They all come from her. This is not subject to debate. This has already been confirmed by National Geographic and the rest of it.
Okay.
The issue is this. When Moors say, I'm a Moor, I'm nationalized, the first thing I'll say, what is your land, language, and culture? If you can't speak Arabic, you can't speak Amazigh, you cannot speak Hebrew, then you don't have a language. If you don't have land because they're focused on, I'm in the Moor Science Temple, Inc., which means it's incorporated, which means you're still a dead entity, so you don't even exist. So in a true sense of the word, we're not talking to anybody.
Right.
Then culture. What is the culture? It can't be based upon Christian holidays. And this is where the so-called Moorish scholars that's out there, they're responsible. Why are they not disseminating this information and revealing there's a lien right now on the White House? I sent a vacate order. He has said nothing. But they put out House Joint Resolution 194 and apologized to African Americans. This was the Congress, and then there's one called S-Con Res 26, where they apologize to Native Americans and American Indians. So they know it's us. They play this play on word games. So when in the HJR 194, in the preamble, the 2 lines, they said, we acknowledge we robbed them of their names and their heritage. So that Philadelphia one where it says HR 75 Philadelphia, where you can annex L and Bay at the end of your name, you can't put L and Bay at the end of a trust of a fictitious dead person because you're still dead. You don't go in front of an admiralty judge, can I please change my name? No. The House Joint Resolution says, if we robbed you of your name and your heritage, you have a right to claim it. You don't have to go in front of a judge to do it. But you have to get a guide and somebody who has experience in navigating people through commerce. So when the Sheikhs, some of these so-called Moorish scholars say they don't teach it, it's because they don't know it. And then they're supposed to say, well, what about the plenipotentiary of At-sik-hata? There's no temple from the Moorish Science Temple that can get on the land without going through me. Not one. Not one of them. And Pleasant Bay had put out a challenge. I answered it. He never responded. So now we're going to up the ante. We've contacted the so-called movers and shakers amongst the Caucasians and told them what the deal was. Now all the Moorish brothers and sisters, listen. You got to go to these so-called leaders and say, what about Chief Nanya L? He put a lien out. Can you explain his paperwork? What's going on? I'm getting calls from Chicago from guys getting their cars taken, asking me for help. And I said, well, why aren't you going to the grant? You contracted, you calling me. Because they obviously, the people are not getting the proper information. Even Farrakhan came out and admitted that the US dollar has no value. I've sent emails to the national, National Call, Final Call newspaper. They don't publish nothing. Like I said, I emailed Africa Bambaataa. I called him personally. I don't get no phone calls. So what's the problem? These guys are scared. straight up. They won't talk about Illuminati and all this stuff. I said, look, you want to talk some real stuff? Everybody's enslaved, and they gave them a fictitious thing. That's why nobody talks about At-sik-hata nation of Yamasee Moors, because we're doing it the right way. And I even went to ISIS and sent them a copy of the export declaration saying, look, we got it signed. If you need help, talk to me and I can give you a whole charter for your whole organization. Now you have a commercial document proving you're on the land, and you go in front of the adjudicator and you say, hold on, who told you to sit down in here? I'm the judge of the court. Well, according to this certified document by the United States Post Office, which was in existence before the U.S. Government, you guys are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and that's confirmed by Representative Ken Jaworski on C-SPAN, that someone threw us in the middle of the Atlantic without a life raft. All the congressmen are bought and paid for. They're not going to do nothing for nobody. They're bought there because Congress, we just found out, is connected to the Vatican. So your complaint's supposed to go to the Vatican. Next question.
Well, we're gonna wrap up now.
Yeah, please.
Islam.
Give next now, next week.
Okay.
All right, so let's show our appreciation for Chief
Two more to hear with eyes wide open.
2 hours of This is the real education.
Save your children, son. Save them.
We'll just close out with prayer.
They do, but you know what I'm saying though.
5 on the left. Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, the Father of the universe.
Mother and Father of love.
Mother and Father of love. Truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
Allah is our protector.
Allah is our protector, our guide, and our salvation. By night and by day.
Through His holy prophet.
Through His holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali.
Amen.
Amin. Ashe.
Islam.
Islam.
Yes, man. Great class, brother.